What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Kai Laveo channel. Glad to see you here. It's been a minute since I put out a video, but I'm back. And I finally seen a video that I've been waiting for to touch down on this topic. We all know that the leftover age is before 30 in most Asian countries, right? Primarily China. But also, there's not really a lot of videos out there about what if you're a single mother and you're in your 30s or a divorcee. It seems like it'd be twice as worse as just being overaged to be looked at in marriage anyway, right? But let's see what these women are saying.
If it's already challenging for women over 30 who are still single, imagine how difficult it is for those who, in addition to being in this age group, are also single mothers.
Some people say I can't find a partner because I have a child. They say that the men I know are all poor, and that my social circle must be full of poor men. Men who can't even support themselves certainly wouldn't accept someone else's child. Those who are financially well off, who have the means to support others, wouldn't care whether their partner has a child or not.
See, the thing about this is, from an American standard, the thing about a man marrying a single mother, you have to be careful because if that goes sideways, you're going to end up paying child support for a child that's not yours. Now, I don't know how it works over here in China and the other Asian countries, but a lot of times it's just not worth it.
But I'm telling you, in reality, it's quite the opposite. The better a man's situation, the less willing he is to accept a woman with a child. It's men from relatively lower classes who might accept a divorced woman.
And that's pretty much what we see in America. Just like they say overweight, obese women are for broke guys. That's usually what you see because most top tier men are not going after, they're not chubby chasing. But just look, if you find this offensive, just take a look around you. If you live in the Midwest, this don't apply to you. I'm talking about areas where there's actually some money. I'm talking about New York, California, south of Florida type. You get it, where the economy's booming, not some small ass town that nobody's heard of and everybody's on welfare because there's no jobs. I'm not talking about those areas. I'm talking about the areas where the large organizations and where all the money's flowing in at. You're not going to see a lot of those guys with overweight women with children. I mean, if those are the women they're dealing with, it's not going to be out in the light.
The more backward the rural area, the higher one's perceived value. There are two factors that determine whether a man will accept a woman with a child. The first is choice, and the second is the ability to be alone. Capable men have more choices. They have more opportunities to find a partner. They would rather spend thousands of yuan a month on a dog than raise someone else's child. Do you think raising a child is just about money? There are many issues in living together, like a dog and a rooster living in the same place. Successful men have a lot on their minds. Besides strategizing in the workplace, they have many spiritual pursuits and need independent thinking space. This is also a crucial factor affecting the willingness to marry. As for the ability to be alone, men in physical labor industries generally have a stronger desire to marry.
These are the guys that are working in the coal mine, construction workers, just service workers in general. I don't know about hospitality as far as like working hotel management and all that. Mind you, that's a good industry to be in. Hotel management or just hospitality in general. You could be a housekeeper for a wealthy family and they'll even take you on vacations with them. These blue collar workers are getting paid, but yet these people in tech are looking down on people at them. Like, what? You do what? Huh? So take me, for example. I'm in healthcare. I work for a large healthcare organization. So I spook the hell out of these tech nerds when I tell them the things I see at my work. But let's keep going.
They long for a lively home with a wife and children. When they have fewer choices, they accept some harsh marriage conditions, such as marrying a woman with a child or borrowing money to pay a high bride price. I have a relative who is an exception. He's a decorator, but he's very good at being alone. In his spare time, he likes reading and thinking. He has two principles for marriage. First, he won't pay a high bride price, even though our hometown is an area where this is common. Second, he is determined not to marry a woman with a child. These two principles have left him single well into his 30s. But he's in no rush. His mindset is very calm.
Now, my friend had just turned 35 earlier this year, right? And he was telling me between the ages of 35 and 45 is your most important years as a man. I guess on the successful stance, because you got to remember, most successful men that have large bank accounts, or should I say Big Bank Hank, those guys climbed the ladder pretty much. Like, they didn't really have the money that they wanted until they were like 50 plus. And these are the guys that have the concubines and everything. So a lot of times they figure, why would I settle for a single mother when I could just pay for what I want without settling for all the bullshit? This is why the heavy set husky dude with a large belly will deal with prostitutes and so on, or have a concubine. And they don't have to be in shape or look good to have beautiful looking young women, because they have the money to make up for not having the looks. These are successful men we're talking about.
It wasn't until last year, at the age of 38, that he married an older woman. Many of his colleagues and small contractors have already married divorced women. They say, a house only feels like a home when there's a woman. But he doesn't think that way. He feels fulfilled, content to live in peace. So, we need to understand that the type of men who can accept divorced women with children are mostly those with limited choices and less ability to be alone. They are the ones who make concessions and compromises, while men in better situations don't belong to this group. This is the harsh reality of human nature.
Somebody find me this woman. She needs to come over here and talk to the women in America.
And any other possibilities outside this general rule are very rare.
Trump's first presidency brought back Arizona's 160-year-old abortion ban, and on day one of his next, he'll be ready to erase more of our freedoms. Kamala Harris is fighting to protect our rights and ensure that day never comes.
Let's be honest, what are the chances of one of these women finding a relationship that meets all her needs and expectations? What kind of man would be willing to accept a woman over 30 who also has children? In my opinion, if they don't have excessive demands, they can indeed find someone who will accept both her and her children. I understand the male perspective well. You might not agree, but if a woman is reasonably attractive, there will be several men willing to take on that responsibility. It's true that they might not find a wealthy or extremely attractive man, but
All right. So to correct what he's saying, yeah, there's a bunch of guys that'll probably still want to sleep with her, but far as settling her and funding her lifestyle and her children is probably a hard pass for most men. I mean, you got to remember, somebody that's at the bottom, I wouldn't even say a bottom feeder, but you got to remember, guys that don't have much, they'll end up marrying these women because they don't have much options, right? But what happens if this guy married a woman like this and he just started doing better financially and just overall? You know, suppose this guy gets in shape and he starts getting women that he really wanted that didn't have all these problems. More than likely, he's either going to cheat or leave, right? So that could go either way.
they could find an average guy with a minimum wage job who is willing to take on and care for her children. What do you think? In a country with more than 30 million more men than women, these women only struggle to find a husband because their expectations are unrealistic. Do you agree?
I want to look, but I also need to find someone who is more or less like me. I feel that a young man who has never been married. I feel that I'm not good enough for him, since I've been divorced and I also have such a big daughter, already in elementary school. Today, one of my former colleagues, a woman, a friend, found out that I got divorced and she told me over the phone. Do you remember that guy? What was his name? Lu Yong or something like that? I forgot his name. He's never been married, so why don't you two talk? After all, you two already know each other. I thought about it and then told her. Talk about what? I haven't thought about it yet. Let's discuss it later. If I'm going to look, I have to find someone who is more or less similar. I feel that a young man who has never been married. I'm not good enough for him, since I've been divorced and still have such a big daughter, already in elementary school. Let's leave this matter for tomorrow. I won't think about it anymore right now. For now, I just want to take good care of my daughter and make more money. I want to make more money and put this aside for later. Take good care of my daughter and make sure her studies are going well, and that's it. Now, my two tasks are these, since it's a second marriage. If you're divorced and don't have children, it's easier to find someone because without children some people might accept you. Especially someone who has never been married. They might accept more easily. But if you have been divorced and still have a child, it is very difficult to find someone.
That's because a lot of times, okay, let's take the Brady Bunch for instance. Both of them had kids before going to the second marriage, right? So just look at it that way. A blended family. She has kids and he has kids. That might work out better versus she has kids and he doesn't have kids. So really that's more of a burden on the man than it is the woman. It benefits the woman more because she has a financial provider and a father figure for her child and a better future for them overall versus all the weight being put on his shoulders. And it's like, let's just be real, in the household, the man usually isn't respected as much, even though he's the provider and, you know, he's heavily relied upon. But all it takes is an injury or a job loss, and that's a lot of cards out of the deck.
Generally, people don't want to find someone in this situation, someone with a child, because the hearts of the two will never be completely together. Because on your side, you still have a child. Recently, I have been receiving many private messages from single mothers. Many women ask how to find a good partner while raising children. And many others who have not yet divorced worry about whether it will be difficult to find someone after a divorce with children. Speaking as someone who has been through it, I can tell you that if you make an effort to be your best self and live happily, it doesn't matter if you have children or have been divorced, you will attract plenty of romantic opportunities. Personally, my biggest period of luck in love was actually between my divorce and meeting my current husband. Looking back, I realized that single mothers, when they understand and make full use of their advantages, can stand out even more than other women. First, all single mothers have experienced getting married, having children, and getting divorced, which means you have already gone through the greatest joys and sorrows of life several times. When facing ordinary matters, your emotions tend to be more stable, and you know how pointless it is to stress over trivial things. You tend to take things more calmly in many situations. There is no denying that many high-quality men, when looking for a partner, prioritize someone emotionally stable and mature. Your experiences naturally give you this advantage. I know many single mothers wonder if having children will affect their dating life. In my opinion, having children is actually an advantage. Why? Children are like a touchstone to test the character of a potential partner. First of all, they immediately eliminate men who are only interested in your appearance. If he knows you have children and still approaches you, it shows a certain level of awareness. Choosing from among these people makes it easier to find someone sincere. You, who are raising children and working hard, do not need to pretend to be weak or in need of protection. Men not only admire your resilience but also feel naturally inclined to protect you, which increases their appreciation for you. Having children also brings confidence, because even if you never find another partner, the company of your children means you will not grow old alone. When you adopt the mindset that it is great to find someone, but okay if you don't, good luck often appears suddenly. Divorce is not always just about finding a better person, but primarily about getting rid of people or situations that hold you back. But you need to have confidence, and that confidence comes from financial independence. When you are on a higher economic and spiritual level, you attract quality men who resonate on the same frequency. I hope all women can live well and find someone special. I hope what I shared today can be useful to you. I wish you all a better and better life. I just saw a question on Jihu asking, is it very difficult for a single mother with a son to remarry? There was a particularly highly upvoted answer that I agree with.
I'm going to say it again. These women that are struggling over there in China or whatever Asian country, they need to come over here to the States. Because there's a bunch of simps over here with high-paying tech jobs in the Bay Area that'll marry these women with no problem. And it's like no matter what jobs they get once they move out here, once they, get their education and everything, and they built themselves by moving to a new country, it's like whatever man they marry, the man is going to be paying probably almost all the bills and doing everything anyway, because in most Asian countries, the man still does everything. Even if they're both financially well, the man still usually pays most of the bills and buys all the cars and everything. So It's really the same expectation, but
So I'll read it to you. The person with the IDE Dent Tong said, "To be blunt, most children are a financial burden, not to mention the costs of education and daily expenses."
and see, that's the part that pisses me off about Americans. They'll be broke as hell. You still have people that have almost no job, but they'll still try to start a family knowing they don't have the financial funds to take care of the household. To me, that's just selfish as hell. I mean, I know things happen, past decades, past, generations done it, but it's really a selfish thing to do. Why create extra stress if you don't have to? I mean, you don't know when you're ever going to be financially independent. You probably almost be 50 about the time you are. And then it's like, wow, I should have started having kids 20 years ago. They would have been adults by now, but I had no money. So I'm going to start having kids now before I'm 30, even though I have little to nothing. So whatever.
What about when they grow up and need to buy a house or a car? That can consume a person's savings over a lifetime.
That's why when a lot of these kids now, when they get to be our age, they probably will be receiving money from past family generational money, assets passed down to them. They pretty much get a boost because they're not going to be able to buy everything on their own in like the next 20 or 30 years because everything's going to be way too damn expensive and the jobs can't keep up with the cost of living. So really, that pretty much puts everybody in debt, right? And a lot of times when assets are passed on, it's at things that are not even paid off yet. So that's something else to look at. So you better have a good financial plan if you want your kids to be successful.
Parents are naturally willing to invest in their own children, but it's very difficult to want to do the same for someone else's child. In other words, why should someone spend half of their life savings for the benefit of someone else's child? Lowering your own quality of life just to make someone else's child comfortable doesn't seem reasonable. Living frugally just to ensure that someone else's child has a good house and a good car? Moreover, many people have children to have emotional support in old age, but even their own children might end up not recognizing them.
Listen, a lot of these kids, they want to get the hell away from their parents once they get about 18 or 19 or whenever they graduate high school, right? A lot of them might end up going off to the military. And it's like, when these kids get about 20, 25 and they're out of the house already, a lot of you aren't going to see or hear from them that much. So if you're relying on these kids to take care of you when you get older, that's not a good strategy. It's really not. That's not guaranteed. If the kids grow up into adults and hate your ass, who's going to take care of you then? Suppose they move far out of state and they can't be around. They have a job that they always have to be at and they don't have time to take care of you. And you end up in a nursing home anyway. So that's not always guaranteed. And it's selfish as hell too. You only had kids because you was worried about who was going to take care of you when you got older. Well, that's not really guaranteed that they're going to be around. Suppose the kids passed on before you. See, these are things that nobody really thinks about. It's like anything could happen about time these kids get adults. Shit, I mean, God forbid, but something might happen to you before them, which, you just don't know. It's not guaranteed. That's why a lot of people live the YOLO life. Because they're like, well, nothing's guaranteed, so I'm going to just do it this way.
How will it be with a child who isn't theirs? There's a significant problem. Even if you treat the child as your own, they might not see you as a true parent since they still have a biological parent. After investing all your savings in raising them, if the child ends up being closer to their biological parent, you might end up with little return on your investment. The risk is high, and the return is often limited. Another serious issue is that if you marry and your relationship with your spouse is good, the child might at least visit you during holidays and not cause too much trouble. But if, after spending all your savings on the child, your spouse dies or has an accident, and the child turns to their biological father, what will you do? You will be left without money and without support. Or if there is a divorce, the child will likely not stay with you, making all your efforts in raising them potentially worthless.
I'm falling in love with this woman right now. She makes a lot of damn sense. So who's gonna take care of you when you get older? Mofo, it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that the children are gonna be the ones that take care of you and see you breathe your last breath. It's just not guaranteed. Just like it's not guaranteed that you and your spouse are gonna be holding hands together before you guys pass on. A lot of times that's not gonna happen.
People who choose not to have children spend their own money in youth and, when they are old, don't have major obligations. People who raise their own children, despite the effort and fatigue, at least have their children's support in old age and someone to care for them in death.
Maybe.
However, raising someone else's child may mean that you will suffer a lot in youth and end up alone in old age. So what's the point? The problem is that feelings are very hard to control. In the eyes of the child, you might be the adoptive mother, but if someone else raises the child as their own, you might not be considered the real parent because the child already has a biological parent.
No bloodline. No matter what you do for somebody else's child, there's no natural bloodline. And a lot of people don't like to do blended families. But the black culture in America is very infamous for that. You have all these kids that are two baby fathers. The mother still remarries. And
if a woman raises a child after losing her husband, or if the child's father has passed away, the situation is somewhat better because there is no biological father involved, which makes forming a close relationship easier. However, if a biological parent is present, it is very difficult to establish a close relationship with a child.
the problem is there's too much jealousy with a lot of these guys in America. So a lot of times the men will stay away depending on if the woman kept the man away purposely from seeing the child. That goes on too a lot of times. So it's not always 100% the man not being around. Well, a lot of times the woman didn't want the man around, right? She wanted to do it all on her own once they, divorced, split up, whatever. And at the same time, you got to remember the jealousy factor. The man all of a sudden really wants to come around now once she hears that his baby mama has a new boyfriend or new fiance, and he's taking his son out fishing and everything. So it makes the baby daddy wants to be back in the son's life, right? It's just that shit too. It's just a lot of jealousy shit. It's like the stepfather has to put up with a lot of bullshit just to be with this one woman, when he could have just had a better time with a few escorts. Because at the end of the day, they did a study that it's cheaper to deal with sex workers than it is to have a wife, because they're paying them to leave and not for sex. In which a lot of times when they first met the woman with kids, all they wanted was sex in the first place, maybe at the beginning, but then they got serious later on and, baby, I want to marry you.
Therefore, many blended families choose to have their own biological children because raising a child with no blood relation is a big risk. Moreover, often the debt associated with raising a child can create significant barriers to the child's acceptance. While there might be grateful children, we shouldn't rely on gratitude as a guaranteed factor. Women might have a slight advantage here due to the traditional Chinese preference for sons. Raising a daughter might lead to more limited support in old age, while raising a son might have more returns. So, I'm not saying that women who raise children shouldn't remarry. But if you choose to do so, it's important to have the ability to support your child on your own and not rely on finding a man to help raise your child. I saw a post on Douyin saying, "She's a single mother who remarried for her son. Now that her son is grown, she can finally get divorced." This woman seemed to be just looking for someone to support her child. Now that the child is grown, she wants to divorce.
And see, that's another thing I have a problem with. A lot of people feel like they're trapped in their marriages. They want a divorce, but they have too much at stake. Maybe they own too many businesses and properties together, so it's going to be a hot mess. One person gets everything, or you have to split half everything. It just becomes a hot mess, right? So it's cheaper to stay together because a lot of people don't want to be out here paying this high ass rent for a 1-bedroom shit shack, right? So I understand. And then on the second part is the children. They don't want to look bad in front of the children. They don't want to despair of the children. They don't want the children to be damaged. Because, you know, when the kids are young and the kids witness a divorce, it's like a hardship on them mentally, right? So a lot of people don't want to put their children through a divorce. So they'll just stay together until the children are adults, and then they decide to do what they wanted to do the last 20 years, is to get divorced. They never wanted to be together. They just got together for, you know, financial obligations. But I guess everybody's marriage is different. I don't know.
Therefore, we must always be cautious and not bet on human nature. Feelings are the most unstable aspect of relationships, and we should not risk relying on unlikely events.
Reflecting on the testimony we just heard, it's clear that the situation for single mothers can be extremely challenging. The testimony highlights how raising a child, especially one who isn't your own, can be a significant financial and emotional sacrifice. Additionally, the difficulty of forming a close bond with someone else's child can further complicate relationships and dynamic. What we can learn is that while finding a partner who accepts a woman with children is possible, it's crucial to have realistic expectations and be aware of
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cut it off right there. I guess we heard and seen enough. That was pretty interesting. Now, this argument could go on all day on the American side. Yeah. And it's pretty much just a overwhelming argument to have to begin with, right? But anyway, leave your comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Salute.
Thank you.